Here we are, Ernie Enns, Nigel Bart with episode 4, season 2, 45 RPNs, and it is Friday. What's the date here? December 9th. December 9. We're leading up into the Christmas season. And yes, 45 RPNs here in Carmen, Manitoba, on Treaty 1 territory, in GPAC, Golden Prairie Arts Council, and Ernie and I are talking music, collecting, and whatever in between. And we've finally come upon a little bit of a format for inspiring these conversations, and that is looking at some history books and pulling 3 different samples of music and visual art, because I'm a visual artist, and we're gonna tie them all together. So the 3 different samples are going to be okay, we're back from an intermission, short intermission. We are talking music, art, collecting, whatever in between, and we're talking about, we're gonna pull 2 artists, like visual artists, and 1 musician from the 70s. The artists, I have a book of about 1,000 artists here, and we're gonna test Nigel's knowledge, because I don't know, the art school was a long time ago. I don't know if I remember anything about that, the art history, but it could be like riding a bike, hopefully. So it's cool, sort of, the snow is blowing a little bit here, the sun's setting in Carmen, Manitoba, on the southwestern corner of Manitoba. It's the brutal winds out here get you. That's what gets you, the cold. So yeah. The brutal winds can, when it's not windy, and if you find a nice warm corner, you're okay. So are you ready for Christmas, Ernie?
Am I? I guess so. I usually don't do anything for Christmas. My wife kind of takes care of that, and so I guess I'm ready. I got to find something for her, but we always promise we're not going to buy each other anything, and I usually do. So then she's ticked, but yeah, I think I am. Kind of.
That's good. I also try not to overdo it with purchasing thing and getting materialistic about Christmas. Like, it's more about the spirit of camaraderie amongst people, I feel. Yeah. Like, that's what, in family. Yeah. I think that's more.
Unless it'd be like a Def Leppard album or something. That'd be pretty
cool. If that came
cool.
in your stocking, man, that would be the best. Exactly. And then it's all worthwhile.
There's always things like that.
The Christmas never bombed. That's, yeah. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna start this off. I'm gonna open this art book, okay? And you're probably never gonna even know this artist, so it's gonna require some research on your behalf. So I'm closing my eyes, doing the old bibliomancy, like flipping the pages back and forth, and I'm just gonna randomly pull it open. Oh, Jasper Johns, and there's American flags, and it says Jasper Johns is the artist. I know this one.
Oh, okay.
He was about in around the 60s, the 1960s. So this piece, it's earlier. I was wrong. It's 1930. So these are the 30s.
That's painted on there?
That is painted.
That's very cool.
It's actually done by encaustic on canvas, wax. A wax process. Really interesting.
What that means.
And it is at the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York, New York. So Jasper Johns, it says what it says. Jasper Johns was born in 1930. The actual piece was 1958, as I thought. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit about this piece here. It's 3 American flags layered upon each other, and it's out of like a wax paint. It says here, really small writing, Johns chose to represent the American flag not because he was particularly nationalistic, but because he was looking to paint the most banal, easily recognizable subject he could find. What better than the Star-Spangled Banner? John's flag does not fly from a mast amassed in glory. It is not carried by a victorious soldier. It is flat. A real flag would, it is flat like a real flag would be if it was pinned on the wall. John's has not represented a flag, but presented us with a flag. Not represented a flag, but presented us with a flag. He is not trying to fool us into believing that it is real. However, encaustic and a medium used primarily by the Greeks gives the painting a thick relief-like surface. John's has superimposed 3 differently sized flags on top of one another, reinforcing the image almost like a flashing light and creating a strange optical effect. With fellow American Robert Rauschenberg, John's is regarded as one of the most important influences on American pop art. Okay, let's stop and think about that. Now I'm gonna pull the idea out. So the concept of this art, that the pop art thing, was like, it's all about the image, sort of like, you know, it's like product and image together. And I'll dig it out a bit more. I'll explain a little more. When I learned about pieces like this in the pop art genre, the art was more about, in some cases they played with the idea that it's like the object is either representing an image or it is an image. I don't know, it's a distinction. It's like sometimes people paint landscapes, and sometimes people paint in a way that looks like a landscape. It's more an object that looks like, I don't know, there's a distinction there. I don't know if you're following that. It's like a musician who plays the most crystal clear guitar, and it sounds just ambient, like music. Like you don't hear the guitar. But then you have a guitar player who draws attention that he's playing a guitar. Do you know what I mean?
No.
How could I explain it? I'll get to this.
Yeah.
It's a really fine distinction. So it's like when you look at a photograph, that photograph speaks more about what you're looking at in the picture. Mm-hmm. But so it's like same with the painting. Some paintings speak more about what you're painting than what you're painting with. Do you follow that? So here, let me keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
So sometimes art and music, I should say, but art is more about like the materials you're using, the sound you're using, the texture you're using. It becomes an object, like a 3-dimensional, like sculpture almost. Like, so imagine this book. It's a big heavy book here. That this book is the art work. Now it's an object. It doesn't contain ideas. It's an object. Usually books are about ideas. So you flip it open and then suddenly there's the ideas. You read, you learn. But music too is like, sometimes music is more about many musicians, for example, don't see the value in, or like maybe not the value, but they look at a CD, for example, a CD cover, and they see it as simply an object. Like it's the beautiful, like you're a collector, right? Mm-hmm. So you love the artwork and stuff around it. Yeah. So in many cases, it's both object and music. Mm-hmm. And for our paintings as well, some artists are about object, like the painting is an object, rather than just a visual escapade, sort of a vision. So like when someone paints, say you painted me as a figure, or I was painted. Some people say, oh, that's Nigel. It's just a painting of Nigel, like my self-portrait painting of Nigel. But to me, it could be just an object. Like it's just a flat object, like of paint pigment on, and it's not necessarily trying to capture me, but it's like the words are representational, and the other word is, hold on, yeah, I wonder if I'll find it again. Oh, I think I lost it, but there's a two where it's either like object or represents an object. So it's like, you know, it's not me up. Some people don't distinguish whether a painting is you, like if it's a portrait or a landscape. If a painting is a landscape, some people just jump right in there and think it's a landscape, like it's an actual landscape. If the painter is skilled enough. Mm-hmm. Some people think no, that's actually about the texture, the feel of the paint. Like it's not about the landscape at all. It's about like the object. So it's like objectifying a surface. When you're a carpenter, right?
Yeah.
So being a carpenter, you know about materials you use. Yeah. And sometimes they use the best wood for an object. And someone might say, oh, well, and you might like have this fine wood, and inside there might be a box with some fine inlay of like some carving and stuff. And it might hold CDs or something. So this box that you have is definitely has depth. Like it's not just a box. But someone would say, no, it's just a box. So there's object and there's depth to it. And it's more about the idea. I don't know if that makes sense, but we'll stop there on that regard. And I'm so this is, we were talking heavy theory there for a minute. Nigel slipped into his wild brain and nearly didn't come out the rabbit tunnel. So we're going to flip open, I get Ernie to flip open his 70s book. Okay, and we'll tie these together.
Yeah, I can do that, but you mentioned the word pop art. What does that mean? What's that mean, pop art?
Well, pop art came at a time in the early 60s, and it flowed on artists like Rauschenberg, Andy Warhol, Marcel Duchamp. These were artists who gravitated to a certain stylistic trend. And pop art was like about boom, high color, like contrast, like big bright colors, very advertising, like very much advertisement style. Like, you know, it'd be like, and this wasn't like in history before. Like, so prior to the pop art theme or like milieu, art was very Renaissance style, like very dramatic, dark, like paint. Really traditional. And then pop art comes along, and you get Andy Warhol with his Campbell soup cans, and Rauschenberg with his garbage can and his garbage bag full of garbage. And it's like they flipped the whole concept of art into more like, well, it could be like sort of, it would be the difference between heavy metal and classic rock. So not to say they're like pop art is similar, but you know, it's like classical music to rock and roll. Right. So every time there's a shift in styles, it was a shift in like movements. So pop art was like the art category that followed, I think it was Dadaism out of the war. So like there's certain, some of these terms just won't make sense unless you study them.
Yeah, I'm thinking
like before like 670s.
You were just talking about how art was always Renaissance or whatever. There was always like a picture of drawing a picture of something, whether it be nature or people or whatever. And then pop art became, reality and went to fantasy.
It
was a drawing of anything.
That's it. You got it. You nailed it. It's about the object. It's not even about. It's like fantasy, exactly, and it's like about, you see these soup cans everywhere.
That's real,
it's
and
just
that's
like
not real.
It's
just somebody drawing something they want to draw.
You nailed it. You nailed it, Ernie.
Well, maybe I am starting to understand.
You are, man. Okay, let's flip open that 70s book.
Oh,
the music.
Yeah, like I just thought maybe what I would do is I would start with number 100 and slowly work down to number one. So,
Yeah, if you
so
like.
you can, the whole time you can always anticipate, well, what could it be? What could it be? What's number
Hey,
one?
that's a good
What's
way.
number two? What's number three? And
Great,
that's
man.
the thing.
Go for it. Go
So
for it.
number 100 starts, the book starts with number 100 because that's how it's written, how you get down to number one. And the very first one is, number one is an album by The Doors, L.A. Woman. And I don't know if you know much about The Doors.
I watched the movie in the late 90s with Val Kilmer.
Oh,
It was a documentary, sort of like.
He was starring like for Jim Morrison?
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
I have seen, maybe it was Val. I remember watching a movie about this guy.
Yeah.
And he's lives a very, I don't know, seedy life or what.
That's
I'm not
the
sure.
movie, yeah. By Oliver Stone, I believe, like directed that.
Oh yeah, I don't know that name either, but yeah, he lived very, not good. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's true. He was over the top alcoholic. He destroyed his liver early in his life, and he drowned in a bathtub, overdosed.
Yeah.
So that's not happy ending for Jim Morrison. But his music was tremendous. Like his impact on the music scene.
I guess so. Like personally, when it came to the Doors, I love the song "Love Her Madly." I don't know if you know that song. It's on this.
I know.
Album.
Yeah.
It's on this album. In fact, second song on this album is called "Love Her Madly," and I believe that was their last release.
Yeah.
Because he died in 71, right?
Yeah.
And this brings up this could be like, that brings up another topic of the 27 Club.
Yep.
You know what that is?
I know it.
You know
27 years old in the music industry or the arts industry is the age when a lot of people suicide and they overdose. It's just it's a 27-year-old rule.
And he's one of them.
Yeah.
And so, and there's a whole list of them. Kurt Cobain,
Amy Winehouse.
of course, probably the most famous, Jimi
Hendrix.
Hendrix.
It goes on.
Janis
Joplin. Chester Bennington. I think Chester was a little older at that stage, but he might have not fallen into that one. But so the industry itself will kill people, but like the music I'm thinking of, like of the Doors, is, to me, they jumped out in the 70s. And talking about the Doors in the movie, I remember Jim Morrison coming out. He's a librarian in the beginning of the movie, and he's just kind of a nerdy librarian guy. He's kind of chubby, and all of a sudden he was just very awkward. He was a very awkward duckling as a younger Jim Morrison. But then all of a sudden the tiger comes out of him, and he just like turned into the major sex symbol of the music industry. Like he was just like, he was a major pop artist.
Yeah.
So like he sort of like, and unfortunately, along with being like this hyper, like potent sort of like pop image of every person on the planet, he lost his way a bit too with drugs and alcohol. And but I remember,
I'm always amazed at how few people can handle fame and fortune. When you look at celebrities and rock bands and how few can actually handle fortune and fame. Because they all go the same way, and all money takes over and fame takes over. And so if you try to think of who was not affected by that, would be very small.
Well,
list.
Billy Corrigan of the Smashing Pumpkins says the music industry is designed to mess with your head.
Yeah.
It's not any other way. This was just a recent quote. He said, it's designed to screw your life up and mess with your brain and to mess with everything. So people who like are starting off on that road need to know there's a lot of weird things happening in that industry, and it's not like a clear road. It's not just about the music. So like, although the music is what is presented, it's there's a lot of sort of like partying that happens in a dark way.
Right.
So.
And do you know why? Why that is? It's designed to, screw your life up, type thing. But you know why?
I don't know why.
Well, when you think about it, like one guy said to me, I used to play with a guy in a band, and he said to me, and he had made it professionally, somewhat like touring in a band. And his name was Phil Stan. I don't know if you ever knew him, but Phil was a very educated guitarist, a very good guitarist, and he had an album out, which I have. But he said to me, he says, if you want to make it in music, you have to sell your soul. Like, in other words, you give up everything else if you want to make it in music. And so you dive in that deep, and that's why, because you're in so deep into it that, the drugs and alcohol and that all comes automatically with that.
Yeah, it's also, that's a very good analogy.
So he warned me. He says, if you want to make it in music, you have to sell your soul. So it's something to think about.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I had never wanted to make it in music. I love playing music and all that, but I don't want to make it in music.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I also think like artistry of like songwriting and poetry and just like bearing your soul and finding something that works, like a certain sound, for example, that comes out of you and other musicians, and then selling it for money, and having this exchange of like, okay, these are my ideas, my music, my copyright, and I present them to the world, or Jim Morrison presents them to the world, and they make money. And who owns that money? Well, when you're signed by an agent, an agent takes a cut of that, and suddenly there's all these arrangements and like
record companies,
and then you can't like sing a song in a certain place, or you can't like there's all sorts of rules established through copyright. So
they take control of your song basically,
and that alone is like a horrific sort of
it
could be a violation, or it could be like just an arrangement that has to happen, but it's tremendously difficult for artists to live with sort of the division from their soul, which is like their art, their writing, and then like selling it to a record company. The record company has it, and like Neil Young just sold all his songs over.
Did he?
Like he sold his rights away.
To who? Who bought that?
EMI or something, Sony really? Or Disney. It was one of those deals. Like it's just like when an artist is on the sundown of their career.
Yeah.
And they think, well, what are you gonna do? You got to make money somehow, and concerts are just not feasible. Well, sell your copyrights over.
Well, especially at that age, like at the age of Neil Young, would you want to go touring the world? It's hard work.
But when you sell your music over, they can remix it and put it in Disney movies or put it in action movies.
And you yourself can't do anything with it.
You can't do anything.
Like he can't go on tour now and play those songs unless he gets permission.
That's right, and they can also use it in commercials for trucks or like cars or like whatever, and maybe you might be totally opposed to that, but like you have no say once it's sold. So.
Yeah, you get this some vehicle advertisement, and they use the "Long May You Run." And they got Neil Young singing,
Like, well, imagine it's like if you sold your song about your Dodge Dart, and it was used in a commercial for Corvettes. Like, wouldn't that drive you nuts? Just like impossible. So. Anyway, so
anyway, getting back to
read a little bit about that, or do you want me to read it?
So I'll read out of this book again, written by Hamish Champ.
Hamish Champ. What kind of name is that? Is he Dutch or is he?
I don't know. I'd like to look that up sometime. Just
Swedish. He must be Swedish.
He could be Swedish. Hamish Champ.
It's a good name. It's a good name.
Yeah.
It's a manly name.
Anyway, we'll have to give the credit to Hamish there for all this information and great pictures, like every album on here.
That's great.
It's great. And this Ellie. So I don't know much about the Doors other than I guess their career was more the late 60s than it was into the 70s. But this is included into the 100 best-selling albums of the 70s, so this is number 100. And I probably wouldn't have put it there because I've listened to the album and it's got Lover Madly, which is a great song.
Yeah.
And it's got Riders on the Storm, which is a really good song.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something it wouldn't make my top.
Yeah.
Whatever, but anyway, we'll read out of here. But so when I first heard about him, it was "Love Her Mad, Won't You Love Her Madly," and the next thing I know, the guy's dead. So shortly after this song was released, I think. I'll read out of here. The album's release date was May 1971. The sheer creative quality of "L.A. Woman," which is the name of the album, is all the more remarkable given the point in the band's career in which it was recorded and released. So the significance of it, I guess. Tensions between band members been rising, with frontman Jim Morrison's behavior had become increasingly erratic, thanks to by now well-documented bouts of drinking, drug taking, and police arrests. And many could have been forgiven for thinking that the Doors were a spent force by the time L.A. Woman appeared. And so, and then it goes on to say, this makes the undoubted power of the album even more notable. Such songs as "Lover Madly," "Riders on the Storm," the title track. The title track, "L.A. Woman," is a good song, too. With its saloon bar, honky-tonk piano, and America, with simply classic Doors songs. La America, that's what it says, with simply classic Doors songs. Morrison, earthly and mature vocal performance is probably as good as he gave during the Doors' lifetime, and the exemplary nature of the singer's contribution was given added poignancy when he died in Paris a month after the show's release. At the age of 27, yeah. Upon its release, the album reached number 9 in the U.S., spending 34 weeks on the charts, and only managed number 24 in the U.K., but has since become regarded as one of the band's best works. It was certified double platinum in '87. It was chosen by the panel of rock critics for Rolling Stone magazine as the 92nd rock album of all time in the same year. So that's about just the long and the short of "L.A. Woman." I mean, other than you listen to it and you create your own opinion, right? Because it's very bluesy, like it's very raw. I call it raw and bluesy. "Lover Madly" is very commercial sounding. Maybe that's why I liked it, because it's very melodic and sounds really good. And "Riders on the Storm" it's a great album cut. Back in the day, everything was AM radio, and so to have a song like "Riders on the Storm," it's 7 minutes long, over 7 minutes long. That would definitely be called an album or a FM song. And later in the 70s, when the FM got stronger and stronger, so did that song. It was played more and more and that sort of thing. So yeah, I listened. I went through the album. I listened to it a bit because I don't think I have it, but I listened on YouTube and cool. So it's number 100, and we only got 99 to go.
Oh, nice. Subtracting 3 from last week. Yeah, we did 2 last week. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And something else I was going to mention about the 27 Club. There is a guy on the 27 Club
like I kind of looked that up, and it's an artist. And I thought I'm gonna ask Nigel if he knows who that is. So the guy's name is, if I don't know if I can pull it up just that quickly here, but let's see if I can find it here somewhere. Okay. The guy's name was looking in the wrong thing here. That's not it either.
Well, you look up that artist.
Yeah.
I'm gonna focus on the next realm.
That's the guy.
Yes,
He's
one of my favorites, Jean-Michel Basquiat.
He was part of the 27 Club.
Well,
Yeah.
he was also had struggles with addiction, but he was in the genre of Jean-Michel Basquiat is one of my favorite artists. African American, known as, I believe it was Samo in a different sort of realm genre, but he had a sort of an AKA acronym. He called himself Samo. He did different sorts of graffiti style art, and Andy Warhol picked him up as like a really good talent, and suddenly they started collaborating. Andy Warhol was like a major artist at that time, and basically they hung out together in New York, Greenwich Village or whatever.
Oh.
Or I don't know if I pronounced that right, but they hung out. They created this amazing art scene and Basquiat was known as one of the. I'm just gonna roll with Basquiat as my next artist. But Basquiat was one of the. He was Jean-Michel Basquiat. He was there's a great movie about him with David Bowie.
Oh.
Plays Andy Warhol, but Andy Warhol was shot by a fanatical fan, and this would have been in 1980 something. So, but Andy Warhol died from that wound, and shortly after, Basquiat also died from like a drug overdose.
Oh.
But he
at the age of 27.
Yeah. So there's a great movie about it. I suggest you watch it to get like the story is riveting and exciting, and it has top-notch actors in that. I think Courtney Love plays a lover of Basquiat, and Andy Warhol is David Bowie, and it's just a great lineup. And it has the artist who plays Basquiat is actually a really well-known artist who like is at the beginning of their career when he came out, because I think the movie itself came out in the late 80s or 90s. So anyway, but I was gonna say about Basquiat, he was one of the abstract expressionists, and that movement came in basically the 70s, I'd like to say. It involved artists like William de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, these artists who were challenging the mainstream of like sort of like representational art, like picturesque, sort of classical, sort of. It would be like the difference between I always use analogies because it's simpler sometimes when you try to break it down, but it's like classical music, and then suddenly you have pop music or whatever. But when classical was the pop of before, it's like the new pop. So Andy Warhol was very relevant in his time with a really graffiti style and like a big, large sort of mural-esque style. He used lots of like he used rollers on the floor. It's very jazz based. Like, so he does it say something about them?
Well, I'm just wondering if you want to read part of this or skim over it.
Sure.
See what they have.
Why don't you read it there for us?
You want me to read it? See what it
Yeah,
says?
what does it say there?
Okay. How do you pronounce his name? Jean-Michel
is French, so he'd be like from Haiti, I believe. So it's like Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Basquiat?
Basquiat.
Yet.
Like Q is this, but
Okay,
yeah.
so the year he turned 20, he became an art world celebrity on the path to a pop culture turning point. After dropping out of high school, the self taught Brooklyn born neo expressionist artist spent the late 70s painting graffiti around Soho, tagged Samo.
Yeah.
And in 1980, he allowed his paintings, which featured colorful, jagged renditions of people often, uh, I don't know what that word is, juxtaposing with words, to be featured in a group show. In the years that followed, he collaborated with Andy Warhol on a series of paintings dated Madonna. Dated Madonna. There, that's what it says. Appeared in Blondie's Rapture video and cultivated the myth of the temperamental artist destroying some paintings and pouring dried fruit and nuts on the head of the art dealer. Sounds a little bit like Jim Morrison.
Yes, yeah. He got a little tired of that.
Along the way, he developed a serious drug problem in the months leading up to his death in 1988, acute mixed drug intoxication, namely opioids and cocaine. He claimed to be shooting 100 bags of heroin a day, whatever that means, but that sounds like a lot.
It does.
He's since become one of the most celebrated artists of the past 3 decades, having been the subject of a biopic.
That would be the movie they're talking about.
And uncountable references in Jay-Z songs.
Yeah.
And I don't know who that is either.
Jay-Z is a rapper.
Okay.
But
so that's what it says about him, and that comes from, it looks from Rolling Stone. It looks like it's a Rolling Stone write-up. So
interesting that it starts in the beginning here. Our little conversation started with Jasper Johns, and who was definitely one of the leading pop artists, and then trend-wise, pop art, highly advertised, like about advertisement, the product, the materialistic sort of edge of like the bling bling, the money, the cha-ching, the party, that's kind of where it starts in the pop art trend. And not to say that wasn't there before in the like 70s and stuff with music and art, like it was there, but suddenly this pop culture was kind of pointing attention to marketing and advertisement, and so that was Jasper Johns. And then you go into the Doors, and the Doors, like, to me, they're an epic sort of like, to me the Doors almost symbolize, like, they brought us out of the sort of the to me they're like the connecting point in context, where they were the connecting point between artists like Johnny Cash and Hank Williams, and going to the 50s. And then there's, all the sort of the conservative, sort of really highly conservative music style, like where it was very 50s style music. So we're looking at like crooners and just like that sort of really sort of I'm thinking of like artists like who's a crooner, I should say, from the 50s, who are like a singer or songwriter. You'd know this better than myself.
From the 50s?
From the 50s, where it would be like the Beatles, or more 60s, but previous to the Doors. So the Doors were actually, to me,
in
Doors.
The 50s, it was like Buddy Holly was like big, he was
there you go.
One of the big influences.
He died young too, but Buddy was, sorry, but Buddy Holly would be like edgy compared to some of the other sort of like Paul Anka styles or like Tony Bennett.
Oh,
or,
there was so much of that. There was because you got to remember music was coming out of a era of like big band music, really, and jazz and all that, and it was coming out of that, and rock and roll was just kind of finding its way, and then I guess when you think about it, like Jim Morrison took the '60s, the beautiful pop sound that we know that everything was Beatle influenced or whatever type thing, and he started to turn it into, or maybe segued it into a little bit heavier classic rock from the the pop rock, that sort of thing. So it's probably had something to do with that too.
I think so. And there's always this
because musically they were very good. Like the band, the band members are very top notch musicians he had. And so.
Well, it's like similarly like visual art. Like there's movements in visual art that often coincide with the movements outside of visual art. So like music, other movements out there, and literary movements. And when I think of the visual movements, it's always like if you're gonna be an artist, successful artist out there, you sort of have to pay attention to the world around you, whether it's political climate, all sorts of different influences. And once you, like, if you being an artist, like a creative type in this world, to be successful, like I often see like the Doors, for example, they found their niche, sort of, and whatever they created, they were like the voice of sort of the late 60s or 60s. Like they just, when they came out, it was just like, yes, they satisfied the voice of so many people out there in that time period. Similar artists do that. Like if they pay attention to what's happening, they're like the voice of a generation. And so
it's always influence. Everything is influence, like, be it like visual art or music or whatever. It's always influence. You always take what somebody else has done and you change it to yourself, and usually it progresses into a different music eventually. And so, but everything is influence, really.
Totally. Totally. That's the hard part too, because you're like, if people don't pay attention to, or just close the door on a certain influence, like and they have the potential to go to the next sort of level. Like they could shut out the best thing that could open a door to their success.
You could change the word influence to inspiration. Like it's kind of the same thing, right? Like you're influenced by this person, but really they've inspired you to do it the way you want to do this, but do it your way, right? And that sort of thing. So it's actually goes right back to inspiration.
Yes, you're right. That's a good way to end it too, this conversation. Like I was thinking, like as we wind this up at pretty much 45 minutes, 43 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go, I wanted to thank Ernie and thank GPAC here for offering the space to record these wonderful podcasts where Ernie and I get to explore music and art and everything in between.
There's something else I thought of. Being December 9th, like earlier we talked about what day it was today, Friday, December 9th. But what special day was yesterday, December 8th?
Oh, this is interesting. I know it. Well, I know one reason. I don't know musically what happened, but I know
musically,
something.
Yes.
I don't know what would it be.
I'll give you a hint. Not that I want this to be a game, but it would have been 42 years ago. 42 years ago on December 8th, and this is year 2022, so that takes you back to December 9th or December 8th of 1980.
80.
Yeah.
I don't know.
John Lennon got shot in New York City. That was December 8th, yeah.
Really?
So I just thought of it when you were talking about the date, and I thought, really?
Yeah. Holy.
So John
Yeah.
has been gone for 42 years. He died at the age of 40, I believe.
Yeah.
And so,
It's what interesting. It all ties into what we were talking about, like Andy Warhol
yeah.
and these like it's
And the
tragedy.
And
It's
the
de-
27 Club is.
it's a wild sort of
Yeah.
circus these guys live. Like when you're up in the stratosphere of
Yeah.
the entertainment industry, things happen. It's not an easy road. So, anyways, we're gonna wind her down. Thank you, Ernie. That was a really cool conversation we had. And keep on rocking in the free world, guys. We're gonna shut her down. Have a Merry Christmas and be peaceful out there. And yeah, make it 28. See ya.